Get this man out of here. This lobby is not for people like you." The words cracked across the marble floor like a whip, echoing under chandeliers that once promised elegance but now carried venom. Two uniformed officers closed in, gripping the arms of Marcus Reed as if he were a trespasser. Behind the front desk, the manager in her pale blazer laughed, arms crossed, a performance meant for the crowd gathering with phones raised. Guests whispered, cameras clicked, and in that instant the line between service and humiliation vanished. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here. Now, back to Marcus Reed. He stood silent, his white shirt pressed against the dark jacket that marked him as ordinary, not powerful. That was the mistake they made. The officer's hands tightened, pulling him forward, but Marcus did not resist. His eyes held steady, calm like stone in a storm. The manager's laughter grew louder, feeding on the spectacle. "This is what happens when you try to play rich," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the room. A few guests chuckled nervously, others raised their phones higher, capturing what looked like the removal of a fraud. The scene was orchestrated cruelty. The officer's boots struck the marble with heavy rhythm, each step turning the grand lobby into a stage of disgrace. The woman behind the desk leaned into the lamplight, savoring her triumph as if expelling Marcus restored order to her kingdom. "Look at him," she sneered, "thinking he belongs here." But Marcus Reed did not flinch. He had heard those words before at 22, when a clerk refused him entry to a boutique hotel he had already paid for. At 27, when his credit card was held up to the light like counterfeit. Each memory had carved a scar, and each scar had built a fortress. Now, inside a hotel he owned, the performance repeated itself. The irony dripped heavier than the chandelier light. He did not fight, because he knew the fight was already his. What unfolded in those seconds would not end with handcuffs. It would end with truth, and truth was heavier than any chain. The laughter from behind the counter did not fade. It sharpened, ringing against marble and glass, as if mockery itself were part of the decor. The manager leaned forward, her palms flat on the polished desk, savoring each second of public humiliation. "He is not even resisting," she said, her voice dripping with scorn. "That is the clearest sign of guilt. Only a liar stays this quiet." Her words sparked a hollow chuckle from a man in the crowd, but just as quickly the sound died when Marcus turned his head ever so slightly. His eyes met theirs, calm and unbroken, and the silence that followed spoke louder than ridicule. A teenager near the revolving door whispered to his mother, "Why are they treating him like a criminal?" The mother hushed him, but not before others caught the question. Murmurs spread. The spell of authority was beginning to fracture. Marcus felt the pull of the officers on each arm. Steady, rehearsed, but not absolute. Their grips betrayed hesitation, a flicker of doubt that crawled beneath their training. He had seen that flicker before. At 25, when a loan officer demanded collateral 3 times the requirement, his steady silence had unsettled the room more than anger ever could. Now, at 42, the silence carried more weight than a courtroom gavel. The concierge at the far edge of the lobby pressed her phone to her chest. She had already checked the system twice. The reservation was real, the name was real, and the executive clearance attached to it could not be faked. Her lips parted, her voice almost breaking free, but the stare of the manager pinned her in place like a nail hammered into wood. Another officer entered the lobby, his shoes clicking against the marble like a countdown. He scanned the scene, the cameras raised, the guests' unease, the man standing tall despite the grip on his arms. "What exactly is the charge?" he asked, his voice careful. The manager answered before anyone else could. "Fraud, trespassing, theft of service. He ordered room service under a stolen name." Marcus let the accusations fall around him like ash. He did not blink. Instead, he spoke again, his voice low but cutting through every corner of the lobby. "Do you know what name you are accusing?" The question froze the air. Guests glanced at one another. The officers stiffened. The manager's smile widened, confident, convinced. "Names do not matter when the face tells the truth," she declared. The cruelty was naked now, the prejudice unmasked. And still, Marcus did not raise his voice. He simply drew breath, slow and even, as if waiting for the inevitable shift, because deep inside, he knew every storm turns, and this one was already beginning to bend toward him. The officer who had just entered did not move closer. His hand hovered near his belt, but his eyes scanned the faces in the crowd, then returned to Marcus. Something in Marcus's composure unsettled him. This was not the posture of a man caught lying. This was the stance of someone who knew exactly where he stood. The manager, however, fed on the tension. She raised her chin, her voice sharp enough to pierce the murmurs. "This is company policy. We protect our guests, and he is not one of them." She motioned toward the officers as if commanding soldiers. "Escort him out now, through the side entrance. Spare the real clientele from this embarrassment." Phones lifted higher. The red glow of record buttons flickered across the lobby. A businessman near the elevator muttered, "Real clientele? He could be paying more than all of us." His companion shook her head, whispering, "Shh, do not get involved." But it was too late. The video had already captured her manager's words, and the world beyond the marble walls would hear them soon enough. Marcus inhaled, his chest rising slowly, then falling with the weight of memory. At 28, he had been told by a clerk in Los Angeles, "You do not look like someone who stays in a penthouse." At 34, he had walked into a boardroom wearing a Navy suit only to be mistaken for the assistant. Every moment of dismissal had been fuel, burning hotter, pushing him further. And now, inside his own empire, the same fire returned. But this time it was not shame. It was clarity. He turned his gaze toward the officer still gripping his left arm. "Do you know what you are part of?" he asked softly, steady as stone. The officer shifted his weight. His grip did not loosen, but it did not tighten either. The concierge could no longer stay silent. Her voice cracked the air like glass breaking. "His name is in the system. I saw it this morning." Every head in the lobby turned. The manager's eyes flared, her veneer of control slipping for the first time. "Be quiet," she hissed. But the damage was done. Gasps rose from the crowd. Someone near the window said loudly, "Then why is he in cuffs?" The question ricocheted through the room. The officers looked at one another, uneasy. The manager pounded the counter with her fist. "Do not listen to her. This is fraud. It is a trick." "How?" Marcus did not move, but his voice carried the weight of centuries. "What you call a trick is simply truth you refuse to see." The silence that followed was thick, charged, waiting to break. The storm was no longer brewing. It was standing right in the center of the Horizon Grand Hotel lobby, and it bore the name Marcus Reed. The manager's face hardened, her smile collapsing into a sneer. She pointed across the marble lobby, her finger stiff as steel. "You are all being manipulated," she shouted. "This man is nothing more than a thief who slipped past security. He is pretending to be a guest, but he is not. He does not belong in this hotel." Her words rang out like a verdict, but the crowd did not erupt in agreement. Instead, a heavy pause filled the room, the kind of pause that signals disbelief. Guests glanced at one another, some shaking their heads, others whispering under their breath. The narrative was crumbling. Marcus remained still. His hands were locked in the grip of two officers, but his silence wrapped around the lobby like a mantle. He knew anger would feed their story, patience would dismantle it. One guest, a middle-aged woman in a red scarf, raised her voice above the murmurs. "If his name is in the system, then why is he restrained?" Her tone carried outrage, not curiosity. The cameras swiveled toward her, capturing the raw challenge. The concierge swallowed hard, her voice breaking again. "It is true. He checked in under the name Reed. I saw the clearance level myself." The manager slammed her hand on the counter so hard the desk rattled. "You will lose your job for this," she barked. The concierge did not flinch this time. "Then I will lose it, but I will not lie." The tension cracked. A low rumble of voices rose from the crowd. Some clapped, others recorded. The officers exchanged looks, their grips faltering. The performance of power was collapsing in real time. Marcus lifted his head, his voice even, steady, impossible to ignore. "You called me a fraud in a place I built. You chained my arms in a lobby I designed. You mocked my silence, believing it was weakness. But silence is not submission, it is evidence, and it is piling up against you." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The manager's composure broke, her lips trembling, though her voice lashed out again. "Do not listen to him, he is bluffing." But her certainty had holes, and the holes were widening. A young man in a leather jacket near the revolving door raised his phone higher, speaking into the camera. We are watching racial profiling unfold live at the Horizon Grand Hotel. This man showed nothing but calm, and they tried to throw him out. Marcus stood firm, shoulders squared, his presence filling the space even while restrained. The storm had shifted. He no longer looked like a guest being dragged away. He looked like a verdict waiting to be delivered, and everyone in that lobby felt it coming. Phones dotted the lobby like a constellation, each red light blinking, each camera aimed at the unfolding confrontation. The marble floor, once polished for elegance, now reflected tension. Guests were no longer just watching. They were documenting, turning the Horizon Grand Hotel into a stage for the world. The manager's voice rose sharper, slicing through the murmur of voices. "This is trespassing. He is impersonating a guest. He is dangerous." Her words carried weight but not truth. The crowd did not nod. Instead, it stiffened, the disbelief now tangible. One officer shifted uneasily, loosening his grip on Marcus's arm. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "we should verify before—" His words were cut short by the manager's glare. "Do not question me. Follow protocol. Remove him now." The concierge, trembling but determined, stepped out from behind her podium. "I saw his reservation this morning. Executive clearance. It was not fake. He belongs here." Her voice cracked but did not falter. Gasps rippled across the room. A man in a business suit near the elevators muttered, "Then what is this?" His companion whispered back, "This is profiling. Plain and simple." Marcus stood still, his silence heavier than any shout. His mind flickered back to Atlanta, years earlier, when he had been 24 and turned away from a hotel after a red-eye flight. He had sat in his car that night, humiliated but not broken, sketching out the beginnings of a vision. That vision had grown into an empire. And now, in the very lobby of that empire, history tried to repeat itself. The manager leaned across the counter, her words dripping with contempt. "Every scam looks legitimate until you shine a light on it. People like him are practiced liars." She gestured toward Marcus as though displaying evidence. A woman in the crowd snapped, her voice trembling with anger. "People like him? What exactly do you mean by that?" The lobby erupted in whispers. The coded language was no longer coded. It was naked, blatant. Marcus finally spoke, calm and precise. "You are not exposing a scam. You are exposing yourself." His words landed like stone on water, spreading outward in ripples of realization. A young man near the revolving doors raised his phone higher. "We are live," he announced, his voice tight with urgency. "They are trying to eject a black man from a hotel he is registered in. This is happening right now." The officers hesitated, caught between conflicting commands and a swelling tide of witnesses. The weight of the room had shifted. The narrative the manager tried to script was unraveling thread by thread. Marcus exhaled slowly, a quiet storm gathering behind steady eyes. He did not need to shout. The lobby itself was already speaking for him, and every voice rising from that crowd was another crack in the wall of prejudice that had just tried, once again, to erase him. The lobby was no longer quiet. It buzzed with a charge that no chandelier could soften. Every whisper, every gasp, every raised phone became a part of the storm. The weight of witnesses pressed down heavier than marble columns. The manager, still behind the counter, doubled down. Her voice rang sharp. "You are all being deceived. He is not a client. Look at him. Does he look like someone who belongs in a penthouse suite?" The question was not about evidence. It was about appearance. It was about race. The words landed like acid, burning through the last threads of subtlety. A woman in the crowd gasped, clutching her handbag tighter. A man in a gray overcoat shook his head. "She said it out loud," he muttered. She finally said it. Phones tilted higher, capturing not just a scene but a confession of bias. Marcus did not flinch. He had lived with that question his entire life. At 16, sitting in a Charlotte lobby waiting for his parents, a clerk had told him the same thing. "You do not look like you belong here." At 30, he had heard it in a boardroom when investors mistook him for a driver. Now, at 42, the same sentence echoed again, but this time, it was not going to end with silence. One of the officers shifted, his grip uncertain. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "maybe we should confirm his identity. The crowd is—" He did not finish. The manager cut him off, her tone rising like a hammer. "Do not question my judgment. This man is a fraud. Call dispatch. We need backup." The concierge stepped forward again, trembling but fierce. "Stop lying," she said, her voice quaking but audible across the lobby. "His name is in the system. I saw it myself. Stop erasing what you know is true." The room erupted. Guests clapped. Someone shouted, "She is right." Another voice called out, "This is discrimination." The manager slammed the desk with her palm, her composure slipping into rage. "Silence!" she screamed. "All of you are being manipulated." Marcus raised his head, his voice calm but resonant. "No," he said, "they are not being manipulated. They are waking up." The stillness that followed was electric, a silence sharper than any shout. Even the officers froze, caught between orders and conscience. The young concierge took one more step, standing fully beside Marcus now. Her voice steadied. "He belongs here. You are the ones who do not." The declaration cracked the room wide open. Phones captured the moment. Applause rose louder. The walls of prejudice that had stood so tall only minutes earlier were crumbling, and everyone in that lobby could see who was left standing in the rubble. The breaking point came not with a shout, but with an action. The manager, red-faced and trembling with fury, snatched a keycard from the drawer and held it high like a weapon. "This card is invalid," she barked. "Proof that he fabricated everything. He is a thief, and thieves do not get to stand in this lobby." She hurled the card across the counter. It skidded across the marble floor and came to a stop at Marcus's feet. The gesture was not about procedure. It was meant to degrade, to turn him into a spectacle. Gasps echoed across the room. A young mother near the elevator pulled her child closer, whispering, "Did she really just do that?" Marcus bent slowly, not in defeat, but with the deliberate calm of a man who knew the weight of every move. He picked up the card, turned it once between his fingers, then placed it back on the counter in front of her. His eyes never left hers. "You do not get to define my identity by what you choose to throw on the floor." The crowd erupted. A man near the revolving door shouted, "That was disrespectful." Another guest added, "We are recording all of this. Everyone will see." The officers holding Marcus stiffened, caught between their grips and the undeniable shift in the air. The manager, flustered but unwilling to relent, snapped at the officers. "Remove him. Now. Use restraints if you have to." Her desperation cracked through her authority, exposing not strength but fear. One of the officers reached for a pair of cuffs, the metallic click echoing through the lobby like a gunshot. The concierge gasped, stepping closer to Marcus. "You cannot," she pleaded. "His reservation is valid. His name is real." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos, steady and low. "Touch me again, and you will answer not to me, but to the institution I represent." The officer froze mid-motion. The weight in Marcus's tone was undeniable. Guests murmured, "What does he mean?" The tension spiked. The lobby transformed into a courtroom with no judge, only witnesses. The manager tried to seize control one last time. She shouted toward the security desk, "Call the police. Tell them we have a trespasser attempting to impersonate a VIP guest." Her voice cracked, loud but hollow. At that moment, the young man in the leather jacket near the door raised his phone, speaking directly to his live stream. "Listen to that. She is fabricating crimes in front of dozens of witnesses. This is not security. This is profiling." The crowd grew louder. Applause mixed with outrage. The walls of prejudice were now fully exposed, and Marcus stood at the center, unshaken. He was no longer just a target. He was becoming the reckoning. The room felt like it was tilting, the balance of power shifting with every second. The officers had not moved, their grip still resting on Marcus's arms but without conviction. They were waiting, caught between a manager's orders and the rising pressure of dozens of witnesses. Marcus's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He lifted it slowly, never breaking eye contact with the manager. He pressed one button and spoke with a quiet authority that carried further than her shouts. "Activate Horizon Protocol. Begin audit now." On the other end, a calm female voice answered instantly. "Understood, Mr. Reed. Systems are live. Every action is being logged and verified in real time." The manager blinked, startled by the formal response. She tried to laugh it off, but the sound cracked thin. "Nice trick," she scoffed. "Anyone can stage a phone call." But the words landed poorly. Guests exchanged looks, murmuring. The concierge's eyes widened. She recognized the name. Horizon Protocol was not rumor. It was internal policy, reserved only for the highest level of leadership. Marcus slid the phone back into his pocket and lifted his head. His voice was calm, even, deliberate. Every word you have spoken in the last 5 minutes is now part of an internal record. Every action is time-stamped. Every insult is preserved. The crowd gasped. A man in a gray suit muttered to his companion, "This feels official. He is not bluffing." Another voice rose from the back of the lobby, sharp with indignation. "Then why is he still restrained?" The officers shifted uneasily. One loosened his grip entirely, stepping back a pace. The other hesitated, eyes darting between Marcus and the furious manager. She slammed her hand on the desk, desperate to hold control. "He is bluffing. None of this means anything. Security, do not let him play you." But her words no longer carried authority. They carried panic. The crowd could hear it, could feel it. Phones angled closer, capturing the unraveling of her certainty. Marcus exhaled slowly, steady as stone. "You tried to erase me with policy. You tried to shame me with handcuffs. But protocol does not bend to prejudice. And tonight, your own system will testify against you." A hush fell across the lobby. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim beneath the weight of his words. The concierge whispered, her voice barely audible yet strong enough to echo, "He is not bluffing. He is the one in charge." And with that, the storm that had been building in silence began to break. The reckoning was no longer coming. It was here. The lobby seemed to hold its breath. Every camera stayed fixed on Marcus, every guest frozen between disbelief and awe. The officers released his arms, not in surrender but in quiet recognition that something was deeply wrong. Their hesitation spoke louder than any command the manager had barked. Marcus straightened his jacket, his movements calm and unhurried. He looked directly at the woman behind the counter, her pale blazer now clashing with the panic in her eyes. His voice was measured, each word landing like stone on marble. "You called me a fraud. You tried to erase my presence in a building you do not own. But this lobby, these walls, every chandelier above us, they belong to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A man near the espresso bar muttered, "Wait, what did he just say?" A young woman whispered back, "He said it is his hotel." Phones tilted closer, every lens hungry for the twist they had not seen coming. The manager's face drained of color. "You are lying," she hissed, but her voice cracked. "This is a performance. You are making a scene." Marcus did not blink. "I do not need to make a scene. I built the stage you are standing on." The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some shouted, others laughed in disbelief. The concierge covered her mouth with both hands, tears forming in her eyes. She had suspected the truth, but hearing it aloud carried a weight she had never imagined. The officers stepped back fully now, their authority dissolving in the presence of a higher power. One whispered to the other, "He owns this place?" The words were not meant to travel, but the microphones on a dozen phones carried them across the room. The manager stumbled, grasping for control that no longer existed. "Even if you are who you say you are, you have no right to humiliate me like this." Marcus's reply was swift, unshaken. "Humiliation is not what I gave you. Consequence is." He lifted his phone again, pressing a single button. "Mark this moment," he said into the receiver. The calm voice of his assistant responded immediately. "Logged. All staff actions under review. Standing by for your order." Every guest in the lobby now knew. This was not a man pleading for dignity. This was the man who held the keys, the contracts, and the power. The silence that followed was not disbelief anymore. It was recognition. Recognition that the man they had seen mocked, restrained, and degraded was the very owner of the empire these employees served. And that truth, undeniable and immovable, had just shifted the room forever. The revelation crashed over the lobby like a wave, and the aftershock left every witness unsteady. Guests who had laughed nervously minutes earlier now stared wide-eyed, their phones trembling in their hands. The weight of realization pressed down on the room. They had just watched the owner of the Horizon Grand Hotel be treated as an intruder in his own house. The manager's lips parted, but no words came out. Her face paled, then flushed crimson as though shame and fear fought for control. She reached for authority that no longer belonged to her. "You cannot prove it," she stammered, her voice shrill. "You could be anyone. You could have staged." Her sentence broke when the concierge stepped forward, holding up the tablet she had used to check the reservation. Her voice was steady now, firm and resonant. "The system lists him as Marcus Reed, executive clearance, owner level." She turned the screen outward, and the glow of digital truth washed across the marble. "It is right here. He is who he says he is." The lobby erupted. Applause clapped against the high ceilings. Someone shouted, "We knew it!" Another voice cut through the noise. "You all saw how they treated him." Phones swung toward the manager, recording every twitch of panic on her face. The officers, now fully aware of the truth, stepped back and lowered their hands to their sides. One of them murmured, "Mr. Reed, we had no idea." Marcus did not even glance at them. His eyes were locked on the woman who had orchestrated the humiliation. "You wanted a scene," Marcus said, his tone calm yet edged with steel. "Now the world will have one, not of me, but of you." The manager shook her head violently, desperation spilling over. "You do not understand. I was protecting the hotel. It was protocol. It was—" Marcus cut her off with a single word, sharp as a blade. "Enough." The sound of it sliced the room into silence. Even the air seemed to pause. Every guest, every phone, every witness felt the authority in that one syllable. He raised his phone again. "Log the staff on duty," he commanded. The calm voice of his assistant answered, "Names recorded. Do you wish to proceed with termination?" The crowd gasped. The reality of what was unfolding struck them harder than the initial insult. This was not just a correction of a mistake. This was justice, swift and undeniable. The manager's hands trembled on the counter. Her authority had drained away, leaving her small, exposed. She tried one last desperate plea. "Mr. Reed, please." It was a misunderstanding. Marcus's eyes did not soften. His voice was steady, final. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a choice, and choices have consequences. Every phone in that lobby captured the moment power shifted completely. The man they tried to erase now held their future in the palm of his hand, and everyone watching knew the reckoning was seconds away. The silence stretched long enough to feel heavy, as if even the chandeliers had dimmed under the weight of what was about to happen. Dozens of guests stood motionless, their cameras trained on Marcus Reed, waiting for the sentence to fall. The manager's breathing grew shallow, ragged, her grip on the counter tightening as though the polished wood could anchor her against the tide she had unleashed. Marcus lifted his phone with deliberate calm. "Proceed," he said. The voice of his assistant came through crystal clear, amplified by the hush of the lobby. "Acknowledged. Termination protocols engaged. Access for Gregory Hale, Marissa Clark, and Ethan Vaughn revoked effective immediately." At once, the badges clipped to their blazers lit red. The electronic chime echoed through the air, final and merciless. Gasps shot through the crowd. The staff members instinctively touched their badges, swiping them against the reader by the desk, only to watch the scanner flash denial in cold crimson. Locked out. Marissa staggered back, her face draining of all color. Ethan muttered, "No, this cannot be happening." But his voice cracked under the weight of finality. Gregory's fury boiled, his words stumbling out in a desperate shout. "You cannot just erase us like this. We were doing our jobs." Marcus stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the marble floor. "No," he said, his tone slicing through Gregory's defiance. "You were abusing them. You were stripping dignity from guests whose only crime was not fitting your prejudice, and you thought your laughter would protect you. But laughter does not erase accountability." The crowd erupted with applause. A woman near the staircase shouted, "That is justice." A young man by the revolving doors added, "This is what happens when arrogance meets truth." Phones swiveled toward the fallen staff, capturing their shock, their unraveling. Gregory tried again, his voice now desperate, shaking. "Mr. Reed, please, I have worked here for 15 years. This hotel is my life." Marcus's gaze did not waver. "And yet in 15 minutes, you managed to disgrace it more than any outsider ever could. Loyalty is not measured by years on a paycheck. It is measured by how you treat the people who walk through those doors. You failed that test in front of the entire world." The terminated staff stood paralyzed, stripped not only of authority but of the illusion that had shielded them. Guests filmed every second, their applause now rolling like waves against the marble walls. Marcus looked around the lobby, his voice steady, echoing beyond the cameras. "Let this moment be remembered, not as my victory, but as a reminder. Prejudice dressed as policy is still prejudice, and tonight it cost 3 people everything." The reckoning had arrived. The staff who mocked him were now erased by the very system they had hidden behind. The balance of power was no longer shifting. It had landed squarely, undeniably, in Marcus Reed's hands. The lobby, once hostile, now roared with applause that shook the chandeliers above. Guests who had been silent witnesses stepped forward, their voices rising in open solidarity. Some clapped, others shouted, and a few raised their phones higher, narrating into their streams with exhilaration. The very stage that had been prepared for Marcus Reed's humiliation had become the theater of his triumph. The former staff stood frozen, badges red, access gone, futures shattered in front of the very crowd they once tried to impress. Their eyes darted desperately for sympathy, but none came. Even the officers who had restrained Marcus moments before stood back, their expressions etched with the realization that they had been pawns in someone else's prejudice. Marcus surveyed the room, his calm unwavering. He let the noise crest, then raised one hand. The applause fell into silence, like a conductor lowering the baton. He spoke clearly, each word deliberate, each syllable heavy with truth. Dignity is not optional. It is not granted by uniforms or titles. It is the baseline of humanity. Tonight, it was violated in front of witnesses, and tonight, it was corrected. His eyes swept across the faces, turned toward him guests, officers, employees, and strangers who would soon carry this story far beyond these marble walls. He did not need to shout. His presence filled the room more powerfully than rage ever could. Gregory, the manager, tried to speak again, his voice trembling. "Mr. Reed, please, this will destroy me." Marcus's gaze hardened. "You destroyed yourself when you decided that my silence meant weakness. When you mistook restraint for submission, that was your last mistake." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The sentence was final, irreversible, the kind of line that would echo far beyond this night. Phones captured every syllable, already destined to be clipped, shared, replayed, and remembered. Marcus took a final breath and delivered the words that sealed the moment. "I do not need to post this clip. I am the final result of it." The lobby erupted once more, this time not with tension but with affirmation. Guests cheered, clapped, and some even shouted his name. The officers gave a respectful nod and stepped back fully, understanding the balance of power had been set right. As Marcus turned and walked across the marble floor, the crowd parted without a word, creating a path for him. He did not rush. His steps were steady, controlled, each one carrying the weight of victory and the gravity of justice. The cameras kept rolling, but they were no longer filming a man under suspicion. They were filming the image of power reclaimed, dignity defended, and prejudice defeated. And as the grand doors of the Horizon Grand Hotel closed behind Marcus Reed, the message lingered in the air like thunder after a storm. Justice had been served, not with noise, but with undeniable authority.